It may not be perfect, and maybe the kids eventually figure out who is and who is not. But it's a lot more likely that they won't be able to, because it will be more chaotic. The chaos is good in this approach. It also makes it much less formal. It puts a lot less pressure on students. Puts less pressure on students to conform. It makes it less ritualistic. It makes it less of a matter where staff are putting pressure on the students to conform, where they are giving cues, rewards for that conformance. It makes it more of a pure program, if you will, where the pledge is being done purely for the sake of the pledge and not for anything else. And if it's the pledge that is that critical, that ought to be enough. And I can understand that school administrators might be less than excited about taking this approach over what they have been doing. It's less efficient. It's more cumbersome. But isn't that better than placing students at risk of bullying, physical intimidation that it can extend to other family members, perhaps in other schools, public pressure on other family members, all sorts of problems that can spill over because of the ready identification of who is and who is not participating. We don't need that in our schools. And I say, if we're going to have this shoved down our throats by legislators who are being jingoistic and want to wrap themselves in the flag, okay, this is one of the outcomes. This is one of the outcomes. I'm sorry that we have to burden our schools with some extra procedures, but this is one of the naturalistic outcomes. For me, it's not a tough decision to make between having a little more cumbersome procedure versus placing students at risk. If we can formulate this type of policy, get organizations behind it, and maybe it's a consortium of organizations, we can formalize the policy. Then perhaps it can be sent out to school districts to say, this is how it can be done. And if you do it this way, you will be on the strongest possible foundation. It's not perfect. You'll still be taking risks. There is still a chance that students in your school will be harmed because of having a pledge recitation program. And if you're forced into having this program by legislators, you need to take it up with the legislature. If you're doing it voluntarily, well, you may want to think once or twice about whether this program is really worth having. But if you insist upon having the program, or your legislators are insisting upon having the program, at least with these policies, you're on a stronger foundation. If you don't follow these policies, or something with similar effectiveness, you're expanding your range of liability. If you take the easy way out, because it's more efficient to have the pledge recited by everybody at the same time, with it being led over the intercom, and you have the students stand out in the hallway who don't participate, and one of them gets hurt, you have just extended your liability from negligence, to willful negligence. You are now vulnerable to a greater range of damages, as well you should be. And the organizations who get behind this sort of policy development should also be organizations, at least in part, who are prepared to make examples out of schools, who will not watch out for the well-being of their students, but who take the easy road. Because those schools need to be made examples. All we need is one test case. Take a school who takes the easy road, who puts ease of administration ahead of the needs of their students. Some student gets hurt by that policy. You have a test case. School loses, as they will. And once that loss occurs, then everything falls like a house of cards. And then we get the cooperation of insurance companies. Because then when schools want to be insured against liability, in that instance, the insurance companies will insist upon schools doing things in a proactive manner that will protect the students, or they won't be underwritten, or they'll have to pay a great deal more for their premiums. I've seen this kind of thing. I used to be a mental health worker, and that's how reforms came about back in the 1970s. It wasn't because of great nobility among the professionals. It's because they started to be sued for deprivation of civil rights. And things changed practically overnight. I mean, within a year, 2 years, things changed dramatically. These test cases can have a huge impact. And I, for one, would not glory if this thing has to come to pass. I would much rather see schools act on a proactive basis. I'd much rather see them get rid of the pledge altogether. But I don't think that's going to happen. Hopefully, on a national level, some organization will get behind a proactive policy to protect students in these opt-out situations, so we're not having reactive damage. I know the ACLU is dealing with cases coast to coast of bad situations that have erupted from Pledge of Allegiance programs where students have been punished for not participating, bullied, etc. and so on. It does not have to be that way. There are things that can be done. And I think using the fulcrum of policy development, helping schools by farming this out to them, and going after the schools who refuse to be proactive, we can go a long way to making this better for everybody. I thank you for listening to me about this. I am going to take this opportunity to plug my book. Arlene said I could. Last year I did write a book called No Santa, No Tooth Fairy, No God. The Need to Challenge Faith in America. It's available from Amazon.com in both trade paperback and Kindle. It deals with the need to challenge the faith community on the illogic of faith as they attempt to use religion to inform or misinform public policy, and deals with using paradigm shifts to argue against theology, and also the place of we atheists in the American landscape and the things that we now have to do to fight for our rights. I also have a novel coming out, probably January, called Bright Colors, and it deals with a young couple back in the countercultural era in East Lansing. A little bit of autobiographical stuff in there, but it's mostly fiction. And the young couple in question are atheists, and the book doesn't primarily deal with that, but it does come into play in many situations as they have to deal with family conflict, extended family conflict, in navigating that period of time. As I say in the book, a period in which nothing was sacred, not even the sacred, and all questions were thrown up for reevaluation. I think we could use a period of counterculturalism right now to awake this country from its slumber of ignorance. Whether this book can help inspire us to wake up, I don't know. I think it's an entertaining read, and it is unflinching in looking at that period. I turn over a lot of rocks, and yeah, it's got a lot of humor, a lot of emotion. I think people will enjoy reading it. So look for that. Again, it'll be at Amazon in both trade paperback and Kindle versions. That'll sell for around, I'm guessing, about $13 in trade paperback. It's a long book, and about half that in Kindle. So I thank you for your attention. I hope it's been of value to one and all. I may see some of you at the convention this year. There's a chance I'll be there again this year. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.